It is Friday, October 29th, 2021, and we are on the verge of UFC 267. I am Mike Bohn, MMA Junkie senior reporter, joined by Farah Hannoun, MMA Junkie staff reporter, and awesome UFC Arabia reporter, too, who's out there in Abu Dhabi on the ground, just killing it, Farah. How are you doing?
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm doing good. It's a lot slower paced. It feels in the previous fight island, so I'm not complaining. It feels a lot more chilled out.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm curious, it's Halloween weekend actually coming up here on Sunday. What's like, do people, what's the vibe? Forgive me if this is an ignorant question. Like, what's the Halloween scene like out there? Is it kind of similar to how it is here in North America, trick or treating, everyone dressing up, all that stuff?
It is. It is. Yeah. Downstairs, they've got themed parties. I'm watching the people dancing in costumes and stuff like that. I'm not in that vibe at all. It's I'm in super fight week mode. But yeah, they've got it. People are like going to parties and doing all that stuff.
Do you have a favorite Halloween costume you've ever wore?
No, no, I'm not. I
No.
don't think I've ever actually properly gone to a Halloween party. I don't think I have.
Fair enough. Halloween's my least favorite holiday, so like I never dress up. Actually, like in high school and stuff, I used to have the Halloween parties, so I didn't dress up. I was like, I'm dressed as the host, so now I don't have to do anything too extravagant. So that's my take on Halloween. But either way, I'm glad we have like an event to kind of fill up the weekend and everything. It's been an interesting week so far. I mean, I think we need to start out with what to me has been like the biggest, I guess, or most interesting storyline. It's Hamza Chimaev's weigh-in this morning. What a scene that was! 3 attempts. Of course, the first one he comes in, very late in the window, 171.5. They give him an extra hour. He comes back, and I think this is where I need you to pick it up since you were kind of on the ground there. He comes back and he weighs 166, clearly holding the towel, and then he weighs 171 and makes it with the hands up. What happened in that moment between the point where he was 166 with the towel? Like I saw, I believe Jose Youngs of MMA Fighting tweet how like they're fixing the scale. Did they actually do anything to the scale itself, or was it literally just an issue of him no longer touching the towel?
I don't really think they did anything. I think honestly they just like he went off the scale and then I think they were kind of debating because obviously it was way off. There's no way he would have lost 5 pounds and a half in that short period of time. So I think it was a matter of the towel, him holding it down. It's interesting that it affected it that much. But yeah, I don't think they really did anything. They just like, all right, you can hop back on. So I don't really think they actually adjusted. They initially said there's something wrong with the scale, but I don't really think there was because they. I mean, Paul Felder was joking about it. He's like semi stepped on it, and he's like, "I must have done something," but he didn't. Like, there was nothing wrong with the scale. I think he was just holding the towel down, so they had to redo it.
That would surprise me. Felder's always out there just stepping on the scale when he's not on the fight card, and people have said you're going to get in trouble for doing that. So maybe we can actually blame him this time. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. I mean, I don't know how we're sitting here like in this day and age, and people still aren't privy to the towel trick. Like it was pretty obvious the first time around. Second time around, he wasn't only putting his hands on, but he was fully leaning over. But then he makes it with his hands all the way up. So I really don't understand how this even makes sense. I mean, what was it like just being in that room? Was everyone as confused as we were kind of sitting at home watching this play out more or less over like the live streams and just the Twitter results and everything?
Yeah, I mean, when I heard 166, I'm like, 166? I had to ask it. I'm like, 166? I'm like, they clearly read something completely wrong, but I'm like, no, they read 166. It's just the wrong weight. But the thing is, he came in half a pound only over. So I don't think there was too much of a panic situation, at least not from my end, because half a pound should be pretty easy, especially if you've got an hour. I know for some people that last pound or half a pound makes a huge difference, but maybe I would have been a little bit more concerned if it was at least a pound and a half, two half a pound. I thought, he looked drained, but not the worst I've ever seen. We've definitely seen much worse. So I wasn't too concerned about it. I felt like he was going to make it anyway. And it's not, nothing is dodgy in my opinion. It was just half a pound. So, and he went away and came back. So I think he made the weight. If anyone's wondering if there was anything there, I think he made it properly or fairly or whatever you want to put it.
Yeah, that's good to know. Then obviously you were in the room, and only a select few people were. So you saw it yourself. He was definitely a little tired. It looked like, and he was
Yeah.
kind of, looking like he definitely had a rough weight cut there. And I'm sure it wasn't easy for him. I mean, the road back to this fight has been absolutely insane for this guy. It seems like one of the worst, or on the bottom tier of like people who had a difficult time with their COVID experience. close to not coming back and everything. Just like, was there any point? I know you've been covering Hamza for a long time, even pre UFC, and have been high on him. Were you concerned at any point that he wasn't going to come back and fighting? And I guess obviously, how nice is it to see him here again this week?
Yeah, I wasn't, because like you said, I've covered Hamza for a long time. He's always been super confident. That's what people don't really know. They think it's the hype of the UFC and all the attention he's getting. He's been like that since before. I mean, even when I covered his fights, when he was competing at Brave Combat Federation, he was calling to be double champion and stuff. So he's always had that kind of confidence, that aura. Even when he, I think I started watching his maybe second or third pro fight, and you could just tell there's an aura around Hamza Chimaev. Like, he's special, even though he's not a man of too many words. You could tell he was special. His teammates were always raving about him. I remember hearing the likes of Manuel and Gustafsson and stuff. They would rave about him. So he was kind of on my radar. But the way he performs, and then man of few words, but is always like, I'll smash him or whatever he says. So I wasn't worried, because I've always known that, like, things are just looking up for him. I think it was just a matter of a frustration thing, because COVID hit him so hard, and there were so many unknowns with COVID with everybody, because everybody's body's reacting to it differently. So I think he was just confused. It was one of those situations like, why is this happening to me? We look at him and he looks like a superhuman, unstoppable force, and it's weird to see that he, of all people, got affected the most by COVID. But that's the thing, because it's like it hits everybody completely differently. So I think it was a matter of frustration to him, because we just assume like, oh, they're great athletes, so it's not going to harm them more than it would harm an average person. And the fact that he was like, his star was sky high, coming off of that knockout over Mearshart, and then boom, he had to sit on the sidelines. And that's a guy who's in the gym all the freaking time. Like, if he's not fighting, he's helping Guram and he's helping all the other guys in the gym. So I think it was just a matter of frustration from his end.
Yeah, I'm wondering to see obviously what he's going to be like in this fight. I think it's a good reset for him. A good opponent here. I like the matchmaking and stuff. They didn't throw him, too far in the deep end, but Li Jingliang is a beast. I mean, he's had some great wins. That Santiago Ponzinibbio knockout was awesome that he had earlier this year on Fight Island. So I think it's a good matchup to show kind of where he stands right now. But what's your expectations? I mean, do you think he picks up right where he left off? I mean, I think the Gerald Mearshart win has aged fairly nicely since then. Gerald has had some good wins since then. The other two, obviously, those guys aren't in the UFC anymore, as far as I know. So, like, I don't know. Do you think this was kind of a good right matchup? And what are your expectations? Do you think he kind of regains all that hype? I think the UFC is like being somewhat cautious with him. They aren't really pushing him to the moon coming into this fight. I think they kind of want to sit back, see what happens. If he has a good performance, then I think we'll be all aboard the hype train once again. But is that kind of what you're expecting on that side of it as well, if he goes out there and just blows Jingliang out of the water?
Yeah, I mean, what I like specifically about him fighting Li Jingliang is he's fighting a guy that is riding a lot of confidence. He's not fighting a guy like you mentioned, the first two guys he fought. It's like we expect. Well, because again, I remember when Hamza fought John Phillips in his debut, people didn't really know about Hamza, so they're like, okay, John Phillips is a power puncher. I'm like, with all due respect, I'm like, this is tailor made for him. I'm like, he's gonna have a absolute standout. I'm like, this might have been the easiest pick I've ever made in my life. And again, that's no disrespect to John Phillips. It's just stylistically, I'm like, it completely caters to Hamza's style. But in this fight, he's fighting a guy in Li Jingliang that's riding a ton of confidence, upsetting a guy like Santiago Ponzinibbio. He's very experienced, Li Jingliang. He's had his wins, his losses, his ups and downs, and he has a big opportunity in front of him. And I think we're going to see a lot of grappling from Hamza in this fight, although I'm sure the excitement of showing off his hands, especially that he did in the Mearshart. But I don't even know if that was his game plan against Gerald Mearshart. I think Mearshart was tentative. He was backing up, and he just kind of, Hamza found that right hand. So maybe we would have seen a lot of grappling against Mearshart, because that's what people were excited to see. Like, he's going to go against a real legit submission threat in Mearshart. So I think Hamza's a smart fighter. I do think he's going to try to take it to the ground against Li Jingliang, and Jingliang has been a little bit susceptible to takedowns in the past. So I do see this stylistically working in Hamza's favor. But, if Li Jingliang surprises him, if he has good takedown defense, is Hamza's cardio going to hold up? That's been the big question, his time off, recovering from COVID. But if I look back at Hamza's career, I look at a fight that he had against Sambo champion Ikram Aliskerov, who's trained with Habib before. a teammate of his, and that's a real legitimate win. You don't see people fight that level of competition early in their career, and Ikram hasn't lost since. Ikram's a guy I expect to see in the UFC soon, and he knocked him out with a brutal uppercut. That was kind of his first clean knockout win before the Mearshad. So he's a smart fighter. He knows how to do that, and he was struggling to get Ikram down. That was his game plan. He came in, tried to take him down, couldn't, but he showed off that he's got other ways to win. So he's a smart fighter. So I can see him doing well. But my point is, I want to see if Jing Liang is going to surprise him with his takedown defense, if Hamzat's going to have that energy, that cardio to keep up that pace.
Yeah, super interesting fight. They were the best face-off of the day at the ceremonial weigh-ins. They were great at the press conference too. So this is perfect. Dana White actually saying that his face-off, I believe, had like 1 million views on their social media in 20 minutes. So I think the interest is there, and if he can pick up where he left off, I mean, who knows? The sky's the limit. I could see them trying to put him in a fight of that Leon Edwards vein. Not obviously Leon himself, because he's got other business to attend to, but I think they'll try to thwart him right up there. And the one I've been saying is watch out Nate Diaz. I think if Hamza wins, that's probably the fight they're going to try to get him to do for the last one as UFC contract, and then who knows what happens from there. But I think we could spend a lot of time talking about Hamza because he is a fascinating character, but a very deep card here we want to move on to a little bit more as well. To you, I'll just ask off the top, you were doing great interviews for UFC Arabia all week, sat down with all the big players on this card. Anything like that really just jumps out to you above all that comes off the top of your head when I'm like, hey, what was your biggest takeaway from the sit downs from the stars of the UFC 267 this week?
Nothing too surprising. I do like Jan Blachowicz's confidence. I mean, he's really coming to his own. And I was talking to him about it. I don't know. That was kind of like my personal opinion. And I was telling him I felt like his win over Adesanya was a little underappreciated. I don't see it being promoted as much as it should. He handed him his first loss, and he's like, no. He's like, I was receiving a lot of praise for that, a lot of nice messages and stuff. So he doesn't feel the same way that I do. That was just something that I felt. And I was initially expecting him to be like, yeah, people are still underestimating me. But no, he doesn't feel that way. And he is a betting favorite against Glover. But I just felt like with his last few wins, the knockout of Dominic Reyes and then beating Adesanya, he didn't catch Adesanya because I'm sure a knockout's nice, but people could have easily downplayed that win and been like, well, he got caught. Adesanya got caught. And he gave Izzy a lot of praise. He said Izzy was very evasive and very hard to win. So that's why he went to the takedowns, kind of adjusted his game plan. So I thought that was a brilliant performance from him. And I felt like people were not giving him credit, but he felt otherwise. So I like Jan's confidence, even though it's a friendly vibe with Glover. Every time they kind of ask him about it, he's like, yeah, well, it's friendly, but I'm gonna knock him out. I'm gonna take him out. So he just has that kind of killer instinct, and it's crazy to see it at that point in his career. And obviously Glover, the whole story between the two of them, the career resurgence, is just great. I don't think the matchup is getting its due diligence because they're just two nice guys. No trash talk, none of that. But I think once that fight starts and once we watch what goes down, we're going to really appreciate whoever comes out on top. We're going to really appreciate that fight for how good it is.
Yeah, I really can't wait for that one. I mean, it's something special. The second oldest combined age for a UFC title fight between these two, 80 years old. The only one with two older guys in there was Dan Henderson and Michael Bisping, and that was an epic fight. I actually put out the list of the top 5 names, and all the fights with title fights with the oldest fighters in them are all memorable, great fights. You got, Stipe and Cormier 3, Liddell Couture 3. So some big fights in UFC history there. So looking forward to seeing that one. I mean, I've missed the Jan Blachowicz train. I guess I could say, like, if you go back, I'm pretty sure I picked against him in like almost every fight. I think I picked him to beat Rockhold, but outside of that, I just, I don't know. It's been like the wrong side of the coin. Maybe just haven't given him that proper due, or thought the other guys were going to do it. The Izzy fight too, but he goes in there and he keeps proving us wrong, and I think it's one of the great stories. But you kind of laid it out there. We have Glover Teixeira on the other side of it, and I think everyone would feel really damn good if he was able to go in there and make this happen. I mean, the John Jones title fight years ago, obviously just the wrong place with kind of the GOAT at the time. That was a really tough challenge, but I think this one is much more winnable for him. And yeah, he seems to just be in such great spirits, but it's a tough task. I mean, I think either of these guys can win with a knockout by decision. It's just going to be a kind of a special fight, I think, in there. So I'm curious to see how that one ultimately plays out and where the light heavyweight division goes from here. I mean, we've seen Yuri Prohajka around there. Have you had the chance to talk to him or his team at all on the ground there, and what's kind of his demeanor being? I know he did the job. He showed up at the weigh-ins, hit 205 pounds, unless absolute chaos happens in the next 24 hours here. I think his services will not be needed, but if you've talked to him or the people around him, what's kind of the vibe with them, and are they expecting to be fighting the winner of this main event?
I haven't actually gotten a chance to speak to him. He sat down at the studio, but I do believe that he seems to be content waiting. I asked Dana about what the plans were for Yuri, and didn't really give me an answer, but didn't necessarily say, yeah, he's next in line for the winner. I mean, the question is, does Yuri want to sit out? Glover and Jan aren't exactly, they're not Kamaru Usman in terms of their championship activity. So is Yuri going to be down to wait all of that? He seems like he's down. But I just think that, the fight with Rakic made a lot of sense. If Ankalaev beats Ozdemir, that would be a like logical number one contender fight. So yeah, like Yuri, I think the way he's approaching, he's a very interesting character. He's very marketable, and obviously he's had two incredible UFC fights, and he has experience. He's a former Rising champion, so I understand where Yuri's coming from. He's not some inexperienced guy that's come off the Contender Series with hype. I mean, he's got a lot of experience, former Rising champion. He's came in, so he feels like he's done enough for a title shot. But the question is he going to be willing to wait all that time for whoever, whether Jan or Glover, whenever they turn around next? Is he be willing to wait, and are the UFC just going to be like, all right, you're next, that's the next title fight set? Or are they going to try to match him up with Rakic or Ankalaev if he beats Ozdemir?
Yeah, a lot of moving parts at 205. For me, I think it's got to be that. I mean, I like this Rakic Anthony Smith rematch idea. Obviously, it's not going to happen in December as Anthony Smith was originally pushing for, but I think that's the logical fight. You do obviously Yuri against the winner. I think you have to preserve this a little bit. He had such an insane fight, knockout against Dominic Reyes there. I think you kind of got to capitalize on that hype and put him in there. But I'm curious, if Glover Teixeira wins, do you think he sticks around to defend the title, or do you think there's any chance he just says, this is my moment of glory, I'm out of here? I know, I mean, for him, I'm sure the championship money that comes along with having the pay-per-view points and holding that belt would maybe be hard to turn your nose up at, but I mean, it would be a pretty perfect story if he did decide to go out there on a title win. I wouldn't blame him. Do you think there's a possibility of that?
It's a good question, and nothing from his body language or the way he's been speaking is alluding to that. But then again, it's not like I know Habib was going to retire, right? Nor Henry Cejudo. So we've seen crazier things happen, but it wouldn't be crazy if he did do that. I would understand it going out on top. He is 42. He's looked great, but he's also taken a lot of damage in those fights. A lot of comeback wins for him, and I figure he's not going to come out unscathed, win or lose against Jan Blachowicz. So a lot of reflecting is going to be done. And if he's going to fight a guy like Yuri next, let's say Yuri is set next, he's going to be fighting those young, hungry, rising contenders. Is he down to do that? Like with the Jan fight, it's a little bit of a different vibe. Other than him being the challenger, he's fighting kind of a fellow veteran. With Yuri, it's going to be like he's fighting the next hype prospect. Same thing for Ankalaev if he beats Ozdemir. So is he down for that role? I don't know. So it's an interesting question. I wouldn't be entirely surprised though if he walked away. I think it would make sense for him at this point in his career, like ride it out on top.
Yeah, I could see it happening. I mean, if he had John Jones or Daniel Cormier or something like
Right.
that, like, being the guy, then I'm sure that would be a huge money fight. He's going to make it all there. But yeah, like if it's Yuri or Ankalaev or something, I don't know what that's maybe doing for him in terms of enhancing his legacy any more than this title fight win would.
Exactly.
So I'm really curious to see how that plays out. But the co-main event also has a historic kind of wrinkle to it. The first time in, I believe, 303 UFC title fights, interim or undisputed, where both fighters are coming off losses. Farah, pretty crazy here. Obviously, a product of circumstance. Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling were supposed to rematch. Now we're getting Corey Sandhagen who steps in, and I know we bring up that fact about them both coming off losses, but of course they could both be coming off wins if Peter Yan doesn't make that crucial error against Sterling, and then if the judges give Corey Sandhagen one more round against TJ Dillashaw, we're framing this in a completely different context. So always important to kind of keep that in mind. But I think in a vacuum, I mean, we talk about over and over how amazing 135 135 is, how it's one of the deepest weight classes. I mean, if you look at all the possible matchups, I think this is one of the best you can do, regardless of titles or wins or losses or anything like that. So I think probably my pick for fight of the night here. This is going to be absolutely amazing, a striking war. I mean, can you give even any beat on how this fight is going to play out, or are you just kind of like me, where it feels like it's going to be a coin flip once they get in there and start throwing strikes?
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, this is such a good fight. I'm not complaining. This is one of the rare times where when a fight falls through, like, and this is the replacement. Like, this is such a good fight. I do believe, like, Corey. One thing that was interesting when I talked to him, I asked him about kind of, yeah, was he surprised with Jan's kind of takedowns against Sterling, his success and stuff. Well, he's like, it's easy to take somebody down who was absolutely gassed. So he didn't seem too impressed at all by Jan's grappling, and he's like, I've got really good submissions, really good jiu-jitsu and stuff. So he's confident wherever the fight goes. But I do believe it's going to play out on the feet. I don't see either guy really wrestling, but it's just very interesting because of their stature, like their height and their reach, just complete polar opposites. Like, Jan's a little powerhouse, and Sandhagen's long, lanky. He's a little more creative, but it's just going to be such a good stand-up fight. And Corey's going to have that in the back of his head, that with the Dillashaw fight, maybe he didn't put his foot on the gas pedal as much as he should have. I'm sure he's watched that fight about 1,000 times. He did a lot of damage, but control is what won Dillashaw the fight. So is Jan going to take that and take pointers and try to grapple and clinch a little bit? It'll be interesting in that regard. I feel like Corey's going to come out with a fire, like, I can't let this go to the judges. So we're going to see a very high action fight.
Yeah, what do you think is the preference for the UFC here in terms of like what would be best for 135? I mean, do you want that Sterling Jan rematch? And I think that's obviously a big fight, a lot of history and narratives there. I think we kind of need to get some settlement on that rivalry there and what happens. But it's really interesting if Corey Sandhagen wins, because there's not much controversy in what happened with his fight against Aljamain Sterling. I mean, he got tapped out, I think, 88 seconds. So, like, there was no doubt about how that one unfolded. So it would be a bit of an interesting situation if you had that interim champ versus undisputed champ, where the guy just beat him not that long ago instead of this rematch. So I don't know. I mean, do you think it's best for like the health and sanctity of this bantamweight division that we get that Jan versus Sterling rematch? Like, do we need that closure?
Probably not as like, because I asked Jan if he'd be okay if he never fought Aljamain again, and he said, "Yeah, it's about the belt for me." I think us as fans, because there's a lot of trash talk has gone between the two of them, social media and all that stuff. So of course we want to watch it from a spectator's point. But I'd just like to see Aljamain take the proper time off. I know he's getting a lot of stick for well, he was medically cleared, but he's getting a lot of stick for even undergoing the surgery, all that stuff. That part is done. They created an interim title anyway. I think he should take his time coming back now. There's no point of him trying to rush into December or January if he's not 100%. What does that mean? Do they strip him or whatever? Regardless, I think he just should be next in whatever championship fight, even if they decide to strip him, which I don't think definitely right now. He should be next in line, but I just like to see him take the time. Like, the criticism is like, you've received it. People have like kind of crapped all over you about the whole situation. That hard part's done. Recover now. Neck surgeries are no joke. It's easy for us to talk from the outside. Take the proper time to recover. Don't feel kind of compelled to rush to get back into it. And maybe we end up seeing Rob Font or even TJ Dillashaw in the mix before Aljamain, depending on when he's 100% healthy and if he's not pressured to come back sooner.
I think that's definitely possible. I'd mentioned it, I think, on one of our spinning back click episodes like a month ago. I mean, the ideal scenario would have been them just doing this interim title fight in like July or August or something with whoever. You probably could have got, Font or Dillashaw, maybe pre-surgery, who knows, but you do the interim title fight a few months ago, then you book Aljamain in like January, and you just don't even have this entire issue. But clearly they wanted this fight on this card, and yeah, the rest is history a little bit. Sterling obviously maybe shouldn't have accepted it, but they pressured him a little bit. Who knows? But yeah, I agree with you. Hopefully we don't see him getting rushed back, because last thing we want is another fight withdrawal, and then just it turns into chaos in this division. So really looking forward to that fight, though. Like I said, my pick for fight of the night. And I know you mentioned Khabib, who is obviously there in the corner of one Islam Makhachev, and this is a huge fight for him. I mean, all respect, Dan Hooker makes lightweight with ease this morning, looks great on the scale. Second time in 35 days he hits the weight class. Obviously, stepping into this card for Rafael Dos Anjos, who had surgery and stuff. Just What are your thoughts on this matchup? Do you think this was the right replacement for Islam Makhachev? I think this is a great opportunity for him to really show his worth in there. And I don't know if I agree with Habib saying he's top 10 pound for pound in the sport already. That seems a bit premature, but he's obviously a damn good lightweight and continues to trend upwards.
Yeah, well, if you remember UFC 242 post fight when Habib put the belt on Islam's shoulder, so I
Yeah.
think it's kind of like, yeah, this is what he's gonna do from now on, like push and promote him, and we were talking about it when you told me that DC and Habib were talking about Islam not talking too much, and yeah, I could tell by sitting down with him he's not too keen. Like even when I asked him about it, he's like, well, yeah, he's not too keen and eager to trash talk. If he does what Islam does and he dominates Dan Hooker, who's not going to be easy to do. I mean, he's a taller, lankier, rangier, very precise striker. He's different type of striker, different type of fighter than he's fought previously in the past. But what's interesting about Islam, he's fought jiu-jitsu specialists, really good grapplers, knockout artists, and like guys like Drew Dober. So he's fought a lot of kind of like specialists. I think Dan, in terms of well-roundedness, is probably the most well-rounded guy he's fought. So if he goes out there and absolutely dominates Dan Hooker and beats him up, finishes him quite early, or even if it's like a mauling and finishes him late, timing is everything in the sport. I do see Gaethje Chandler being right now makes more sense. But look at the interim bantamweight title fight that we have now. It didn't exactly make sense to what we thought it would be. So timing is everything. Islam has one job to do, and that's just to win in impressive fashion. But Dan Hooker is riding a lot. Like they say he has nothing to lose. I kind of disagree with that because yeah, he's like that hero role of saving the day and all that stuff. But if he loses, it's gonna push him back a lot. So in terms of the title contention picture, so I feel like he has a lot to lose as well.
Yeah, really important fight. And you make a good point about the title picture there. I mean, if you're Islam Makhachev, I think you are Charles Oliveira's biggest fan and Michael Chandler's biggest fan. Because if Chandler beats Justin Gaethje and Oliveira beats Dustin Poirier, then I don't think they're going to be looking to do an Oliveira Chandler rematch at this point.
Right.
If Islam wins, then he goes right in there. If Gaethje wins, I think he's probably a little bit higher up in the queue. And maybe Islam fights like Beneil Dariush or something like that. And that would be regardless of whether Poirier or Oliveira wins that. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts there, but if I'm him, I'm kind of hoping that's how it plays out. But maybe he goes out there and does something so spectacular that he jumps the queue anyways. But it's hard to imagine like Gaethje, if he does win, it not being an amazing victory. And obviously an interesting situation there with those three lightweights I would just mention, Islam, Gaethje, and Beneil Dariush, all being managed by Ali Abdelaziz. So I'm curious to see how he tries to navigate that little situation that's going on here at lightweight. So a really big fight there, obviously. Those are kind of the four fights we just discussed. Obviously, Hamzat, Makhachev, and then the two title fights that like really stand out to me on this card. But is there anything else you're really interested in? Obviously, Volkov and Tybura is a rather important fight at heavyweight. Amanda Ribas, how she rebounds from that loss. We got some good fights on there. So but maybe some of these lesser undercard fighters that maybe people in North America don't know as well. Is there anyone you're really excited for there?
I'd say Lerone Murphy and Makwan Amirkhani. I like that fight. I like Lerone Murphy. I'm high on him as a prospect. He came in with a very tough fight. We were there for that, Zubair Tukhugov, and that ended up as a draw. But Zubair is tough too. He's a really good fighter. So I think Zubair's issue has kind of been energy management, but he's very skilled. So I'm high on Lerone. I think he's a really good fighter, and Makwan is a great test because Makwan's a very good grappler. He's also experienced. So yeah, and I think if Lerone can go out there and have an impressive win over Makwan, he'll be a nice prospect to watch.
Yeah, I got some people reaching out to me like I do my pre-fight facts articles, and they're like, "Why aren't you giving Lerone Murphy any love on there?" I'm like, "Dude, he's had three fights. One's been like a decision, a draw, and a TKO. Like, there's not much to say about him yet. Let him have a little more of a body of work, and I'm sure he'll find his way into those lovely stories I put out every single week for. But I want to ask, you are obviously on the ground there on Fight Island. What's the vibe like compared to the past? Three times you guys have been out there. Obviously kind of a different circumstance now. There's going to be, I believe, more fans in attendance than any other event, and you guys aren't in a bubble, I don't think, at least
No.
quite as much. So yeah, just what's it like there compared to the past three?
Yeah, no bubble. It's a lot more free. We're still getting tested and stuff, obviously, but no bubble, a lot more free. Just feels like a normal fight week. The bubble was very restricted, but it was also in the same way. It's like you had where you needed to go. It was actually weirdly enough easier to navigate because we didn't really have anywhere to go. Like we're locked, so it was easier to navigate within the bubble in terms of getting to what we need to do. But now, obviously, it's a lot freer. But if you're working anyway. It doesn't really feel that free anyway.
Yeah, is the basketball court back? That was the big question.
No, it is not. They're just doing random food trucks in the middle. But I would have loved to use that as a break, challenge random people. But unfortunately, no basketball court.
Yeah, well, that's luckier for all them than you, right? Because they would have just been handed them all L's. So there you go. I'm
Exactly.
curious. Dana White said today that he got Abu Dhabi citizenship, got a gold visa. Do you know anything about this? Like, how does one acquire Abu Dhabi citizenship? Is it just a completely arbitrary process? They just point the finger, and if they want to give it to you, there you go.
I don't know much about it, but I'm assuming I don't. I don't think this is just something that's handed out. But considering that Fight Island has become like a second home to UFC, I wouldn't be surprised if they open up a PI here as well. UAE Warriors just signed a deal with Fight Pass. I think their first show yesterday aired, and today,
Hmm.
right now, is airing on Fight Pass. So big things happening in the Middle East. So Dana was always talking about buying a house here. I don't know if he ever ended up doing it, but seems like Abu Dhabi is becoming kind of like a second home to the UFC, and especially now with a lot of international fighters having visa issues and stuff like that. You can tell by this card, like it's basically all the fighters that have had issues. Lerone being one of them, Volkan Ozdemir being another one. Abu Dhabi just comes as a kind of a savior for all those guys.
Yeah. Do you have any insight into these big plans Dana White keeps talking about, whether it means more events or just, I don't know, like any even slight clue what he's hinting at?
I do not. The PI is my guess. That's one of the things I think it'll be, and then maybe just have one of those kind of like big weekends or big weeks, excuse me. Maybe 3 events in 1 week or something like that. Just do some massive. Well, this is showdown week, but I feel like maybe have multiple events or just do something on a much larger scale. I don't know what exactly, but I just feel it's probably something like that. Other than just the like we had 242 was one pay per view and now 267 for this. Maybe a few more events or something like that.
I'm curious to see what their plans for 2022 are. Obviously, this new mandate in the U.S. of all the coaches, fighters, teammates who come in from international countries having to be vaccinated to fight in the U.S. I think that's going to cause them a lot of problems there in terms of fight cards because I do not have a high level of confidence there is a high level vaccination rate among UFC fighters. But we'll see what happens there.
Well, before you transition, actually,
Yep.
sorry, because I actually just asked Dana about that, and he's like, they changed it. I'm not aware of this, but he's like, actually, that's no longer the case, and you just need a PCR test. That's what he told me. So if that's the case, I don't know. I have to go read up and see what I've missed, but it seems like apparently not. Apparently, they just changed it again, so maybe something we need to look into. Apparently, just PCR
Interesting.
tests. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
right.
That makes sense. I mean, obviously, I'm going to New York for the UFC
Uh,
next week. I am fully vaccinated, but I still need a PCR test to enter the country. So I don't know exactly how the whole thing works, but yeah, that would obviously be a big time savior because they have a lot of international fighters. So we'll have to see what happens. Someone asked in the comments, Farah, I think this is maybe the most important question of all. Have you seen Hasbulla yet?
I have not. I've, a few people I know have. He was in Dubai, I think, Nogueira's gym, hanging out. They did like some amateur tournament or something. I don't know what was going on exactly, but he was there. Would have been nice if someone told me, but uh, but yeah, apparently he was there, like hanging around. I expected him at the weigh-ins, but apparently not. So I'm assuming he'll be at the fights for sure.
That's funny. Do you know what kind of crowd there's going to be? Like, what's the attendance capacity? Is it like 100% capacity, or there's there still some limitations there?
I think so because it started out with like 30%. They just kept expanding and it kept like saying more and more tickets are on sale. So I think it's 100% capacity now. They are pretty strict about the application. It's called the Al Husn app, where you have to show that you are A, vaccinated, B, that you have a COVID test. Maybe I don't know if should show it or could show it, but basically it shows that it just gives you kind of like a green light, and then you have to like scan it on. So they're pretty strict about that. You can't enter hotels without it either. Even my own hotel that I'm staying in, every single time I have to come back in, it's like, oh, all right, I'll pull up the app. You have to show that you're vaccinated, and then to enter the arena, a PCR test that's valid for 48 hours. So we're trying to get tested every time to make sure that it's valid to enter the arena and stuff like that.
Yeah, and does it feel like, obviously, 2 title fights, some big names, does this feel like a pay-per-view level card to you? I mean, I know I reported yesterday that Bruce Buffer, for the first time, I think since 1996, will not be the ring announcer for a numbered UFC event. Obviously, best wishes to Bruce in recovering from COVID. That's a Cal Ripken-esque streak that comes to an end for him. I don't think anyone will match that level of consecutive, ring announcer consistency for them. But no Joe Rogan, obviously, either. We haven't seen him on a pay-per-view since July. Obviously, these are kind of extracurricular things. It all comes down to the fighters and the quality of the fights. But for me, I know everyone's saying this is a free card. In Canada, it's still the same price as every other pay-per-view. It's still that $65. So it's pretty much only for the ESPN Plus subscribers in the
Right.
US where they don't have to pay that 65. But does this feel like on par? I know it's not a McGregor fight, but we've had some big fights in Abu Dhabi during this stretch. Where does this rank in your mind?
Yeah, I'd say it feels yes and no in terms of how big it feels, because the moments like the press conference, the face off between Hamza and Li Jingliang is nice, but yeah, like obviously when like I've been to like McGregor fights or whatever, like it's a different feel because like the press conference is a lot of ruckus. Well, actually not the one I went to. That happened to be the Dame McGregor, but usually this because like you have a lot of like quieter, more respectful fighter, obviously a language barrier for a lot of those guys. So I feel like on the night, yes, I'm gonna feel it tomorrow night because a lot of big implications in these fights, but just the press conference and stuff like that, because it's a bunch of very cordial, nice individuals. Hamzat's kind of been stealing the show in my opinion. But because it's a bunch of nice and cordial, respectful individuals, maybe it hasn't given it the feel that it deserves. But I feel like when they make the walk, yeah, like there's a lot of big fights on this card.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this event. And obviously, we go straight into UFC 268 next week. I'll be trading places with you, and I'll be on the ground there with John Morgan. So, going to be good times coming up. But I know it is getting late over there, and you've had a very long day already, Farah. So, I will let you go. We'll wrap this up. Kenny, you can prepare to take this thing down in the back. But I know Farah is going to be giving us some tremendous coverage on site, doing more awesome interviews on Fight Night and everything. And yeah, Farah, just keep killing it. I know you will, and appreciate you taking a little time to join me after what I know has been a very busy week.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate it. And everyone enjoy the fights tomorrow.